He was a leader. The guys rallied about him. He was confident, but he wasn't arrogant.
He was a shifty devil. He could move and run and throw the ball.
He was a master of doing the right thing at the right time.
Every ounce of me is being poured into that team, and they never, ever disappointed me.
It's a feat that hasn't been matched, and I don't know if it will be.
What he did, nobody can take away.
If that guy would have come into the NFL, I would have hunted him down.
I talk about him a lot. Always used him as an example. Not only was he a great athlete, but he was even a greater human being.
Ealey is back to throw. He's looking, finds no one open. He's going to scramble. He's at the 30. Ealey chucks it at the 25. Cuts back at the 20. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Toledo.
Major funding for Undefeated, the Chuck Ealey story, is provided by Investors Group. For more than 80 years, Investors Group has helped Canadians build long-term financial security through relationships between client and consultant. Investors Group, a culture of caring for our communities. And by Buckeye Cable System. Donna D. Smith. With additional support from the following. And by the generous financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.
As the play-by-play announcer for the University of Toledo football games, WSBD Radio from the mid-1960s to the early 90s, I was able to witness many great moments. But nobody has been able to match the accomplishments of one man's journey through uncertain times to become part of college football history. Chuck Ealey was born in 1950 in Portsmouth, Ohio, located on the northern banks of the Ohio River in the foothills of the Appalachians. In the 1800s, Portsmouth was a critical stop on the Underground Railroad, which continued north through Toledo and into Canada. The city quickly grew around an industrial base with the completion of the Ohio and Erie Canal and the construction of the N&W rail yards and the B&O Junction. Chuck lived in the north end of town in low-income government housing, where even the most basic essentials such as food were often scarce. In spite of many hardships, Chuck's mother, Erlene Ealey, provided him with plenty of love and moral support.
Early part of my childhood, my mom and dad were divorced, so I don't even recall my dad being in the same house with me. Because my mom only had an 8th grade education, she didn't have a lot of things going for her, but she had to work very hard and go out and leave me and have me taken care of by other people or other situations. So it was a very difficult time as far as what people thought in life, but a very loving time. We were not necessarily miserable because we had sport and we had family and we had traditional things and we had respect and obedience for those around us. For the most part, you live within your community.
As a kid, Chuck found out early on that growing up in the 60s would provide many challenges, including racial discrimination.
You know it's a problem because there was social environment, name calling, social things that happened, but you knew where to go, when to protect yourself there. But I remember we had a pool. There was one pool in the community, and only the white kids could go to that pool. My cousin had gotten killed in a swimming accident and drowned because we had no pool, and he went into a quarry. We had to go to this pool and do a sit-in at the time of the civil rights movement. And you see the things that were happening on TV with the dogs and the billy clubs and the things, and I had no idea, but we knew that we wanted to take a stand for our community. We were taken out of the front line of the pool area and put in a paddy wagon or back of a police van and taken to the jail and do the whole things, and eventually we were let go. And so there was this fine line that I was crossing at times, making a stand for what I believed to be right, but understanding that the relationships that we had with things could sort of affect maybe sport. Those were choices that you felt at the time were right.
For kids growing up in this community, neighbors became an extended family. Older kids became mentors, and for Chuck, they became role models and heroes.
And you would see them go through high school, and you would see them be very successful in their high school, because I never dreamed about playing professional football. I always dreamt about being, okay, Larry was good in high school, I want to be good in high school.
My first recollection of Chuck, and back then it was Junior Ealey, and I can remember all our games were pickup, and being one of the older ones, I was always one to pick, and if I could get him, I got him.
We all congregated out there at the park. There would be players ranging from 20 years old down to 10. And every person there tried to help each other become the best that they can be.
There were times I remember going to the park and playing with Larry Heisel, who was an All-American basketball player. And we would play a game to 24, and he'd give me 20 points and beat me to 24. But it was the challenge, because he wouldn't let me take a shot. He'd make me have to earn it, and made me have to work for it. And you learn from that experience.
When you're not as good as your friends, Larry Heisel, Al Oliver, Chuck Ealey, you can tell talent. And like with Al, Larry, Chuck, you knew they were special.
Although growing up in the projects provided a sense of security, poverty created a less than ideal environment. While some of Chuck's peers made poor choices, he and his friends recognized that through athletics, they could make a better life.
And I remember growing up telling myself that I don't want this for the rest of my life. And I know that there's a better way. And people like Chuck and Lee and myself, I think we use that to motivate us to try to find something better. And it can happen. Poverty, hard times can be a motivator.
You know, we never took anything for granted. You know, we knew what we wanted, a better life, and we strived for it.
Chuck's mother knew that the way to a better life was through education, and worked multiple jobs as a cleaning lady to offset the costs.
I live in the north end of town, in the community, and I walk up the hill to what you would define as the part of the city no black people lived in, but I went to school there. It was a Catholic school, and private in the sense, yes, you had to pay. I used to buff the floors and wax the floors and earn the ability to go to school there and be taken care of while I was there. And then I would come back home to the community and live. So I had sort of these two different kind of worlds that I was in, but yet and still felt very comfortable in both.
One way that Chuck felt comfortable in both communities was playing sports. Skills developed on the playground and the projects that now enabled him to succeed at the next level.
As I went to grade 9 and was coached there, I was watching this Notre Dame High School begin to build a good, strong tradition. And I was looking forward to being able to play on the varsity. And so in my sophomore year at Notre Dame, I got a chance to play. Now, I didn't start my sophomore year. Coach Miller was very disciplined. He was very organized in what he wanted to see done. And I think he was grooming me along to be able to step in for the quarterback that was already in front of me.
And we had a junior quarterback who had gone undefeated in '65. So we recognized his talent, and we thought, hey, he's got to be on the field. So we moved Jimmy Jones to a tight end, and Chuck took over as quarterback, which I was probably criticized a little bit because he said, why are you moving an undefeated quarterback, Jim Jones, to a tight end? But we recognized his ability, and he didn't let us down. And when he walked on the field, hey, he was in charge. And you know, he practiced so hard. He was the hardest worker on our squad. He would just, and he never missed a practice in the 3 years I had him on the varsity squad.
I don't think Chuck got the chance to really show himself that much in high school because Coach Miller was more of a Woody Hayes type coach. He liked to pound it out and stick it down your throat.
But when Chuck threw the ball, we made it count. You know, very high completion rate when he threw, and he was a big part of our running game too. He would sprint out, he'd cock that arm. Boy, if that defense dropped a step, he would be down, get your first down, or stick it in the end zone.
The Notre Dame Titans went on to win 18 games that Chuck started at quarterback. He finished his high school career at an unbelievable 27-0, leading his team to the state title as a senior in 1967. It wasn't solely, though, his raw athleticism that he was undefeated. It was also through discipline, respect, and hard work.
Probably nobody was any rougher and tougher on kids than I was, but I would not let that young man leave this locker room without me giving him a pat on the back and saying something good about him that day.
And in many ways, Coach Miller was like the father that wasn't in my household. And he didn't know that. I don't think he meant to project himself that way, but he taught me about discipline, and he taught me about being organized in the way he did things. That's primarily it. And I learned a great deal from him that was quietly taught.
Following his amazing high school career, Chuck was expected to leverage his football experience to attain a scholarship at one of the nearby universities. It was now time for him to decide which school would fit him best and which scholarship offer he would choose.
So I really wasn't concerned about what school that came from. I had a natural inclination to go to Ohio University or Miami of Ohio because all the kids in our area, usually those were two closest universities that they went to. And so Coach Hess had come down from Ohio University, but never came back.
Bill come through and he said, you know, I'd like to have Chuck, but I want him as a defensive back. And I said, Bill, you know, Chuck really wants to play quarterback, and I think that's his position. I said, we've never even played him at defense.
My dad had taken Chuck and I down to, I believe, University of Miami, and that's after we had already been to a couple other schools. And Bo Schembechler was coach down at Miami at the time. And I was quite impressed with Bo Schembechler, and I was pretty much impressed with the university itself. And until we got in the car and started coming back on the way home, and Chuck was looking a little bit down. And I said, "What's up?" And he said, they didn't offer me a full scholarship.
We'll give you 2/3 full scholarship, and 1/3 we'll put you on a hardship case, and we'll let you come in at the third quarterback and the defensive back.
Now, Bo disappoints me. One thing you never tell a kid is, hey, you're going to be this or that. You tell them you can do anything you want to be. I've never told a kid, ever. If he wanted to be a quarterback, hey, you can be a quarterback. Now, if I got somebody else a little better than you, and you can play over here or over there, then that's where you're going. But to tell him beforehand, not very smart.
And I said, no, Bo, no thank you. And I'm thinking here after I said that, but I was making a choice right then and said, that's not what I want. And I can take something less, but I decided not to take something less and find the right opportunity for me. And where I at least got someone to say, we want you and we want you to do this, whether they were telling the truth or not, and change your position. But I wanted the opportunity to get the avenue of playing quarterback and go from there. And little did I know that this would foreshadow some other decisions that I would make later on in my life.
Frank Lauterbur, coach of the University of Toledo Rockets, was asked by the Mid-America Conference to speak at a dinner near Portsmouth. Following his speech, the principal of Notre Dame High School asked Lauterbur if he would be interested in recruiting an undefeated quarterback named Chuck Ealey. Although there were no football games for Coach Lauterbur to attend, Chuck was playing in his last home basketball game of the season that night, so Coach Lauterbur called the university and sent one of his assistants.
I think it was Dick Walker who recruited Southern Ohio and went to see him play a basketball game.
We came back the next day and were talking about recruits, the people we were bringing, and it said to Dick, "What'd you think of this Ealey kid?" He said, "Coach, I haven't seen him on film. I don't know how good a football player he is, but he said, with no time on the clock, he threw one in from mid-court and won the game for him last night. He said, I think he's a winner.
Father Grimes, the principal at the time, stuck his head in one of the classes that Chuck and I were in. He said, Jim and Chuck, come here a minute. We came out in the hallway, and he said, there's a coach here from University of Toledo wants to see you. Both of us looked at each other and said, where? You know, we'd never heard of the University of Toledo at the time. And like I said, I was pretty well set that I wanted to go to Miami, but well, it was another free weekend at a college. You know, what the heck, I'll go, and I'll go with Chuck and see what happens.
So the next stop I went to after I'd gone to Dayton was to Toledo. And as soon as Frank said, we give you a full scholarship and a full chance to be a starting quarterback here, I said, give me the paper.
So anyway, we ended up going to Toledo, and the rest is history, I guess.
Many fans were experiencing the jubilance of sports. Escalating problems were developing in society. People of all ages and races were being exposed to issues that they didn't necessarily understand or know how to deal with. For many people, sports no longer sheltered the turmoil that was brewing.
Everything was going on in the country. It was a lot of turmoil with the war, Vietnam War. You had the Black Panthers, you had Martin Luther King assassination, you had Kennedy assassination.
Growing up in a Toledo neighborhood, Christine Brennan was exposed to sports at an early age. Her dad played football at Drake University, later was a season ticket holder for the University of Toledo.
Playing out for me in front of my eyes was much more than just football and much more than just sports. This was America. This was the coming of age of a new generation.
I remember all of these things were going on in my life, even with the war in Vietnam, because we were part of the ROTC program, at least from a school standpoint.
We woke up every single day thinking about the Vietnam War. What do we do? Do we go in the ROTC? Do we forget about college, just go get your 2 years over with, get drafted? Everybody was getting drafted.
They were starting to do the draft for anybody who was in university, and it was one of those birthday drafts.
It was a lottery system where they put everybody in the pot, and if your number came out, you know, a certain one, let's say 1 to 50 that first year, you're probably going to go. Beyond that, you made it.
I was watching the night that they were doing the draft very strongly the first time I was involved, and I do recall my number came up 153, something where like that.
My number was 365, so I was not going. It was really funny. I was playing basketball at Bowling Green in the intramurals. Came back from the intramural game, missed like the first 15 numbers, and then it kept going and going. And I'm saying, I had to be in the top 15. I'm gone. I got to the last number, it was me. It was beautiful.
And I remember that I was not a military man, but it was part of the training that was going on, and people would come out and protest as we put up the flag and say things, black man, you don't belong in the army or the going to Vietnam. And I had no intentions of going to Vietnam as far as I could see, but at the same time, all these social elements were clouding in on the world, and it was very difficult in one respect. But again, you would go and put on your uniform, go put on your shoulder pads, go play, practice, whatever, and there was some commonality there.
You know, into this firestorm of political and cultural battle you know, comes this wonderful, calm presence named Chuck Ealey.
But when he came in, I was also recruiting a kid by the name of Bill Kamaleski out of Cardinal Stritch. And because I recruited Bill Kamaleski, I was going to play him. It's freshman football. Who's watching?
There was no security in me coming to Toledo, even though Frank said that I was going to play quarterback, that I was going to be a quarterback.
And I looked at him and I went to Frank afterwards. I said, boy, would he be a great defensive back. That's how smart I was.
And being an athlete, and I use that in a positive sense, is almost a detriment because you're kind of have the opportunity of running back, defensive back, quarterback. So they saw me as someone that could potentially do all this because if Coach Walker recruited me on basketball, just to know that you're an athlete, they know that they can find a place for you to play.
Unfortunately for Bill, he had an injury in one of our scrimmages and they found out that he only had one kidney. His playing career was over, and then Chuck stepped in before our first ball game.
At that time, freshmen were not eligible to play varsity football. Chuck settled into a leadership role on the team by relying on his background growing up in a multicultural environment. As college would present new social challenges, he would discover that his new coaches and teammates were very talented and unique in their own way.
There were guys from Cleveland and Detroit and New York and Archibald, Ohio, and all these different people with different backgrounds, different social things. It became a real interesting viewpoint that I was getting brought to me on.
It was a perfect mix of the right personalities at the right time, led by a terrific coach, Frank Lauterbur, and then the third year, Jack Murphy, when Lauterbur went to Iowa.
It was the coaches, what they instilled in us, and the character guys that they brought into the program, and that really made that special.
This was a truly remarkable group of young men. A lot of character. Sometimes people say characters too, and but they were football players. Don't ever forget about that. I mean, they knew one thing, and that was winning. And there were so many of them, so many outstanding names of people. We had a fine defensive team. Our defense was first in the nation in total defense 3 consecutive years, and that has to tell you again about the great pride. It's something that they built on, and then it just got bigger, and the men met the challenge all the time.
We knew we could play. We weren't cocky about it, but we had that behind us. We worked hard for what we accomplished. My high school coach gave everybody a card the first day of practice. It said, be mobile, agile, and hostile. That's to be a good football team. They had the mobile, they had the agility, they just didn't have the hostility. And I think I kind of brought that to the team because, I was fresh out of Vietnam, so I knew what hostile was.
After Chuck's successful debut on the freshman team, it was now time to turn his efforts to the varsity squad in the spring conditioning program before the summer break. Steve Jones was the starting quarterback on that '68 team and was returning for his senior year. And at the conclusion of spring practice, there was a traditional old-timer scrimmage.
Steve started in the old-timers game when we brought back some of the seniors, the other people who had graduated and came back and they played against us in the spring game.
We had a quarterback in there. Right?
Senior quarterback that
next
played
year,
all 11 games the year before, and who was a good quarterback. In fact, he had led the conference in total yardage.
But then Steve didn't have a good spring game at the time or whatever. They put me in, and we came back and we won that game.
And at the end of spring practice, there was only one person that was the leader of that ball club, and it was Chuck Ealey.
The transition, I think, was a good, easy transition. Wasn't like there was a similarity in levels. Chuck, by far, was, obviously he proved to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, probably ever.
Chuck proved that he was ready to lead the 1969 Toledo Rockets and would make his debut at home against Villanova. The Rockets won that game and the next two by a combined score of 117-40. The Rockets would meet their first real challenge just 22 miles to the south at Bowling Green State University, who was led by Hall of Fame coach Don Nehlen and defensive star Phil Villapiano.
Well, when you play football at Bowling Green, as soon as you walk in the door, there's two schools that you have to hate, Miami and Toledo.
We were probably Toledo's biggest rival, and I know that they were our biggest rival, right up the road. Bragging rights and the whole bit.
If I heard a rocket, the name of a rocket, to me it got me fired up to play football. I didn't even like to go to Toledo to go to a movie because it was Toledo. Coaches really, really like to get you over the top. It didn't take too much to get me over the top. I really enjoyed when somebody, got into my brain. And to play against the Toledo Rockets, hated them.
We're up at Greenfield Village, and I've got this transistor radio pressed to my ear to be listening to Jerry Kyle on WSPD radio on the Rockets game at Bowling Green.
We're down there, and we're up 17-0 at halftime, playing at Bowling Green in that wind tunnel. In fact, if I recall, we even had a punt that probably only made net 5 yards because the wind brought it back.
And in that game, Don Nehlen, who's a great coach also at Bowling Green, they took advantage of our coverages because we were trying to sneak up, and we were sending 7, 8, 9 guys at them all the time. We were going to shut down the running game. And nobody ran against us at all. But the passing game, we did give up a touchdown or two. But we wouldn't let them run. And I think Bowling Green got us in a couple scores.
They start taking it to us pretty good, and the next thing you know, it's 24-26, their favor, with probably 40, 45 seconds left to go in the game, and they're kicking with the wind. The ball goes into the end zone.
I remember looking at the Bowling Green players on the other side celebrating. They had thought they had won. They were French kissing the cheerleaders and all that stuff, And we just thought that we still had time,
We were at the far end of the field with the wind in our face. And I stood there on the sidelines, and I said, I'm going to see how he's going to do this.
And as we're waiting for Chuck to come off the sidelines to get the series going, he walks into the huddle, and I've got my head down, I'm looking down, and he doesn't say anything for a few seconds. And it's like an eternity almost. I can remember this pretty vividly. And this has been a defining moment for me. And so since he doesn't say anything, everybody kind of looks up at him, and it's like everybody's now focused on Chuck. He's got our attention, and he gets that grin on his face, and he just goes, let's go to work.
Two or three passes, a couple scrambles, and before you know it, we're inside the 20-yard line. And
I forget exactly how much time's left on the clock, but there's like 8 seconds or 9 seconds. And Ealey goes back and throws the football, and I'm praying he throws it over the middle, and they did. They threw it over the middle. And we tackle this guy, and my daggone clock operator, he leaves 1 second on the clock.
I remember exactly when it went down. We stopped them. They got within a field goal. But the wind is blowing like 100 miles an hour, so it was like, no way this guy could possibly make the field goal. I mean, it was just a mess. I can't believe, the field was a mess. The weather was a mess. But here's Toledo lining up about on a 20-yard line, and right before the guy snaps the ball, the end right in front of me goes up in the air, no flag. And I'm like pointing, which I never even went in because I'm pointing at this guy. Then the ball gets snapped.
And all of a sudden, the wind stopped. Really, it just stopped. And he kicks the ball.
And I'm listening to Jerry Kyle, and the kick is up. It's up. It's up. It's good. And I leaped for joy.
I remember Joe Green just fell to his knees, and that team just was deflated. Bowling Green was deflated. Our team uplifted, and at that time, at that point, that became my team.
Now that his teammates had confidence in Chuck and he had earned their respect. They sailed through the rest of the season, including the Tangerine Bowl against Davidson to finish undefeated. Being nothing new to Chuck at the beginning of the 1970 season, he picked up right where he left off. The Rockets had victories against East Carolina, Buffalo, Marshall, and Ohio University to increase their streak to 15-0 before the rematch with their arch-rival Bowling Green.
So 1970, and Bowling Green's playing at Toledo this time. So Ken Grotz, that whole game. Now we've got the Falcons coming up to play at Toledo, and of course it's a huge game. And Phil Villapiano, who would go on to great fame with the Oakland Raiders, and was perfect because those Oakland Raiders were Jack Tatum and all those, those clowns, crazy nuts, Anyway, Villapiano, before the game, the Toledo game, he's talking about how he's going to kill Ealey, going to put him out of the game, kill him, I'm going to kill him.
That's the way defense is coached. Take their best player out and deal with the rest of them. And we were instructed all week to take out Chuck Ealey, and if we didn't take him out, we weren't going to win.
So Villapiano's on the sideline. We're at near the at the opposing sideline, so we're right there, and my dad's screaming out, "You're gonna kill Ealey, kill Ealey, yeah, you're gonna kill Ealey," and he's like, "Dad, okay," but we were all laughing, and he's laughing because he was never serious about any of this.
I'm so focused on Chuck Ealey. I got beat on like 3 reverses at night. I'm chasing after the guy, and he hands the ball off. This guy flying around the end. Oh, I would love to have a film of that game just to see what a jerk I was.
So there were those kind of moments. I think that because the Rockets kept winning and winning and winning, there was that sense from a lot of opponents. It was like, well, wait a minute, we're gonna get this guy, and they couldn't get him.
And we didn't take him out, and we didn't take out the other guys either. So we stood no chance.
And the Rockets won, and Villapiano was the one that had to, of course, eat crow after that game, which was great. We loved that. We chortled about that for days afterwards.
The Rockets got that 20-0 shutout against BG, and 2 more wins later, they were playing at home against the Redskins of Miami of Ohio. It was a hard-fought defensive game where the Rockets found themselves down late in the fourth quarter.
Miami was one of the toughest teams that physically I ever played against for 2 years. The third year we played them pretty easily, but the first 2 years in that particular game, we came back in the last few minutes of the game.
And with less than 2 minutes to go in the game, we're down 13-7. We got the ball on the 20-yard line, and I will tell you, there was not a doubt in anybody's mind on that field, on the sideline, in the stands, didn't have a doubt either. And we took that ball right down 80 yards, Chuck led us right down there, and we stuck it in the end zone and beat them 14-13.
After that narrow victory, the offense averaged 35 points per game, and the defense held their opponents to only 10 points per game over the final 4 games. Their last win of the 70 season came in the Rockets' second straight trip to the Tangerine Bowl against the legendary coach Lou Holtz and his William and Mary team, who again finished the season undefeated.
Coach Lauderber had done a tremendous job with that football team. They were very, very well coached. Ducky Lewis, I think, was defensive coordinator. They played hard. But Chuck Ealey was the heart and soul. He just made things happen.
With the record now standing at 23-0, it became obvious that every opponent would now be gunning to end the Rockets' streak. And after a 45-0 road win to open the 71 season against East Carolina, it seemed the Rockets would not be seriously challenged. But not every game would be that easy.
There were other close calls. I think the other one that comes to mind in a huge way was 1971. One of the first games of that season when they had to play Villanova at Toledo.
We're 7-7 for the whole game in my senior year. And I could probably sense, now I can look at it now, people's eyes tearing up and say, well, it's okay if it's a tie, it's not the same.
Now there's something to lose. Now it's you've won all the games in 69, all the games in 70, and now you're coming into this 1971 season. They've been ranked in the top 15 in the AP and UPI polls, and the game's winding down. And I remember looking at my dad, and I said, Dad, what about the streak? And he said, well, a tie is better than a loss. You're no longer, it's no longer a winning streak, but at least it's an undefeated streak. It's unbeaten. You do not lose. And like, okay. And I'm steeling myself to the fact there's going to be a tie.
One of our coaches said, there goes the streak. And I'm thinking, the game's not over yet. We end up getting the ball back for the offense. And
we called a play. I called a play in the huddle. And I said, everybody do what you normally do on this play. I'm going to do something different.
Chuck took it in his own hands, faked a sprint out to the left, came back to the right,
And so instead of going to the side I was supposed to go to, I went to the opposite side to draw the defensive back over, and I told my roommate Glenn Smith, I said, just take out down the sideline. And I threw a long pass to him.
And it's right in front of us, and he catches it. They're setting up for a field goal. Seconds are winding down. George Keim is now the field goal kicker. And it's one of the last of the straight-on kickers. And he gets out there, and he kicks it. And immediately my eyes go right to the referee, and he's signaling, it's good. And it's good, and the Rockets win 10-7.
A lot of people came, you got those doubters. A lot of people came to see us lose, and it never happened.
The Rockets went on to win the rest of their games in the 71 season and their third consecutive MAC championship, and earned another trip to Florida for the Tangerine Bowl. With their win streak now at 34 games, it was now time for Chuck and the other super seniors to play one last game.
In December of 71, my dad and I went down to Orlando, flew down there, and went to the Tangerine Bowl and saw that last victory. The Rockets winning it easily, 35-0.
And into the NCAA college football history book, where Chuck's 35-0 record as a starting quarterback still stands today. But in the midst of the 71 season, when everyone was watching the Rockets celebrate this awesome accomplishment, Chuck was experiencing something very painful. Although leading his team and helping them attain this record, Chuck could do little to help his 5-year-old brother, Brian, from dying of cancer. Chuck always wanted a little brother to mentor just like his friends helped him growing up in Portsmouth.
The real crisis came, and I happened to be called home, and my mother said, Chuck, I think this is pretty serious. So I got there, and I was there with him, and I was probably the last one he recognized and saw. My mother was downstairs, and then he passed away. Difficult period of time, yes, I must say. And I tell people, I said, there's things that are great in your life and there's things that are very difficult in your head, but you keep moving on.
Chuck went on to become the Mid-America Conference Player of the Year all 3 years he started, and was voted first-team All-American by the Football News, and was 8th in the Heisman Trophy ballot in his final season. During the streak, the Rockets were ranked as high as 12th nationally, and were number 1 in the nation in total defense over the 3-year period.
I never realized we were in a streak other than one game at a time. And all I know is that we would play, and then all of a sudden the season's over, and we were undefeated. Then we start off and not thinking, well, I wasn't ever counting. We were at game 23 or game 25. Not till the end of this thing when I was standing in my senior year with Steve Banks, and Steve may not remember this, and I said, Steve, I don't think we really realize what we've been able to accomplish here. And someday, we probably will look back on this and realize how good this has been.
And I remember having tears in my eyes when it ended because it was so great to watch them win and to see this whole thing completed, and yet then it was over, and they're done, they're gone.
And when it was all over, it was almost a sad moment because we couldn't do it again. We would never be the same team playing together again at the last game we had down in Florida. So it was kind of one of those sad moments that, daggone, this has got to stop. And not because we wanted to, it's just that time.
When you think about what he did, then that really sets him apart. There's very few quarterbacks or athletes in any sport that could make that statement.
I've never seen anybody that dominated opponents like he did on a continuous basis. And he's the only guy to ever win 35 games in a row as a starting quarterback. There's a reason for that. I don't think there have been many people like Chuck Ealey.
If I ever had a 35-0 record that's never been broke, which probably never will be broke, because the competition is just too good nowadays, and somebody's going to sneak up on you. I think it's a great thing for those guys because they can party the rest of their lives.
You know, I think I'm a sports journalist in large part because of that team. Because I was crazy about those Rockets. I remember my dad putting his arm around me and saying, you know, that's okay, that's all right. But we were very sad because we had just seen something incredible, and now it was done.
Although Chuck's college football career was over, his ultimate goal was still within reach. With one semester left, there was still work to be done before he could pursue a professional football career.
My next step was to make sure I graduated in May in regards to the off season. Honestly, my next step was, okay, I had to get focused because whatever happened, I did not want to have to come back to finish school. And so I was on target, on focus, and my next thing was to get my degree. In the midst of that, there were these people that came around and talked about the NFL, and people were coming around talking about the CFL to a certain degree.
It's the sadness is starting to kind of overtake me that they're going to be leaving. I'll look forward to Chuck playing in the NFL. And my dad said, honey, I'm not so sure about that. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he said, there are people who think that black men cannot play quarterback. And this was stunning to me. This was absolutely shocking to hear those words from my dad. And my dad said them with great sadness. He was not pleased to say that to me.
There was a stigma placed on minority quarterbacks that intellectually they didn't have what it took to be able to run a team.
This just couldn't happen. We just have been watching this man win every game with guys hanging on his arms and last-second field goals and amazing drives, just refusing to lose. Chuck had never lost in high school, he never lost in college, and how in the world could this not be something that the NFL would want?
I did not want anything else but quarterback. I had seen the situation where a number of the quarterbacks that had played in university, whatever the case may be, black quarterbacks end up playing defensive back, wide receivers, Briscoe, whoever you might want to name out there, but I did not want to do that because I felt that what I needed and wanted I had with my education and my degree. And if that meant that I didn't have to play, couldn't play, wouldn't play, that was okay, believe it or not. But I wasn't going to go into the NFL as a defensive back.
Now here comes the NFL draft, and there's 17 rounds of the NFL draft. There are a lot of rounds, way more than there are today. And of course it wasn't on TV the way it is now. And all 17 rounds, 442 players, and Chuck Ealey is not picked. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That this man who was so great and who clearly was an All-America on one team, he was second and third team All-America in other ways, and eighth in the Heisman balloting and not drafted. It makes me sad to this day to think of that, frankly. That's a tough one.
Obviously, I didn't get drafted, and I got a call from Denver and a call from Hank Stram from Kansas City asking me, well, we'd like you to come into camp and run a 40. And I thought, what quarterbacks do you have running a 40-yard dash for time? I said, no, thank you.
I find this out years later. Chuck had told them that he did not want to play defensive back. So here's Chuck once again asserting himself, being a leader and saying, and being so strong and so comfortable inside his skin and with himself that he's telling these NFL teams, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play by your rules. I want to be quarterback. And of course, that then makes perfect sense that they didn't draft him because they knew they couldn't turn him into a unfortunately, into a defensive back.
I really attribute that to the tenor of the times within the NFL. Not society as much, but within the NFL. There just wasn't room in the NFL at that time for a black quarterback. And when I say there wasn't room within the minds and psyche of the powers to be within the NFL. There's always room for a great athlete, but the NFL just wasn't prepared to do that.
That being said, I was neither hostile at the NFL or what. I just took it as what it was, and I had to do something different. And I feel very fortunate that the training that my mother gave me about being respectful in all situations and being able to be disciplined to, as my coach taught me about certain things I had to move forward to, is to just keep moving on.
And so sports being always about renewal and second chances, and there's always another kickoff, and there's always another game. Clearly what happened quickly for Chuck was that he went up to Canada and signed with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and then was playing in the CFL, in the Canadian Football League.
And I had a great time playing in Hamilton and going into the first year. It was such a wide open game. You know, I could roll out and keep the ball and run. It was almost like being in college again. But, you know, we're playing professional people in a different level. And was quite an exciting avenue to play. And the people were well grounded, well involved with the game and knew it. And it was a good experience to me.
As a rookie, Chuck sat and learned the system behind veteran quarterback Wally Gabler. Hamilton won the first game of the season over the Saskatchewan Roughriders 2017. The Tiger Cats went on to lose the second game of the season to the British Columbia Lions, and Chuck was thrust into the starting lineup the third game of the year against the Edmonton Eskimos.
We lost. People said, "Oh, what does it feel like to lose now?" It was a loss. I knew what losing felt like. So we lost that game. We lost to Edmonton, and we came back, and then we ran off about 12 or 13 straight.
It just got better and better as the year unfolded for Chuck and for all of us to grow with confidence that, hey, he was bringing us closer to the ultimate destination, which was the Grey Cup.
After Chuck reeled off another 11 straight victories, including the playoffs, he found himself in a familiar position of competing for another championship. On December 3rd, 1972, on Hamilton's own field, the Tiger Cats found themselves in a tight battle with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and the score tied at 10.
We took over the ball somewhere on our 15-yard line with about 1:10 left to go.
With overtime looming, Chuck Ealey starts the last drive. "27 yards to Tony Gabriel, his first today." Almost, Robbie! Again, Ealey picks Gabriel. 12 yards and another first down. 1 minute 15 seconds remaining. Second down. Again, it's Gabriel. 51 seconds. The league officials get ready. Ealey has to get closer. Canada's outstanding player in 1972, Garney Henley.
We got him! Who is it? Got it! Come on!
How much time is left? Buchanan is stopped. What a finish this is going to be. Rookie Ian Sunter will attempt a 34-yard field goal, the most important of his young career. It's good. Hamilton 13, Saskatchewan 10.
In the 60th Grey Cup, Chuck was named Most Valuable Player after passing for 291 yards and a touchdown, and rushing for 63 yards. He also earned All-Star honors and was chosen the first CFL Most Outstanding Rookie Player for the 1972 season.
So when I think of Chuck and I think of who he is, what he represents, he really is the epitome of our game. He's a guy who could have played at any level of football, right? And he got a chance here. And when he got that chance, he proved that he was a winner in every facet, in everything that he does. He's a winner.
And so that's why I think, history's so important. It's so important what Chuck has done because it gives us a sense to look back and say, hey, there is someone who have achieved that. despite what race and color he is.
But to see him come as a rookie here in his first year, do what he did, lead his team to a championship, that is the epitome of a real winner.
After Chuck's rookie season, he married longtime girlfriend Sherry Dennis, who he met while attending the University of Toledo. Chuck and Sherry would later go on to have 3 children, Damon, Sky, and JL. Chuck continued to play 6 more seasons in the CFL, 1 more with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, 2 with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the remainder with the Toronto Argonauts. Over the course of his career, he accumulated over 13,000 yards passing and 82 touchdowns. Chuck and his family would eventually settle into a suburb of Toronto, where they currently live today close to their children and grandchildren.
So I did play 7 more years, got some injuries, got some things, was traded back and forth. And none of that was ineffective until my final year when I said, okay, it's time. It's my 7th year. I said, I think it's over. And I felt very good about it, that I could walk away from the game versus the game pushing me away. And so I went into business. I went to work for John Deere. And then after working several years with them, I got a chance now to work for where I work right now, Investors Group Financial Services, where I work now as a manager dealing with people and finances and hiring and training people, and it's a wonderful experience. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and this company's been great for me in that opportunity.
And so when you look at him and the building blocks and what he did, he is the model that, hey, right, if he can do it, I can do it too. What the tougher thing is to balance that and translate that into great success off the field, right? In an executive position, being a professional. And most importantly though, I say that every successful man is not a successful father, but every successful father is a successful man. Not only did he do it on the field, as well as off the field, most importantly, he's a great family man. He's a great father and a great husband.
I don't think there's any more important responsibility than to have a protection of my kids or our kids or whoever's kids. And the one thing that I learned, and you take a negative, and I get emotional about this, but you take a negative of what happened with me and my dad, and you turn it into a positive because you want this to be the best for your kids.
There's something inside of him that has always said, I'm not going to fail. Not everyone has that. But I think that's what he's kind of done, and it made a huge impact on all of our lives as kids.
As he got married and had us, his family was the focus. And, you know, it just makes me really appreciate him more for what he did.
He's been, you know, a great father. He's supportive with the kids, encouraging them to do the best that they can in whatever they choose to do.
I remember him loving my mother and loving her so much, and always feeling really safe and secure in his affection for her. And I think that helps create a family that's really safe and secure as well.
Everything is a team to me. I mean, family's a team, sports is a team, business work is a team. And if we get all these teams working and functioning together, we would have a better society. I mean, and by building on that, I think that those are the things that were very important to me.
I mean, he was teaching me lessons. He didn't even know I existed, and he was teaching me some of the most valuable lessons of life.
Chuck Ealey was born to be great, and that's what he is. He's a fine football player and a fine person along with it, and I think you can't ask for more than that.
But the real reason why he was great is because of his character, of his leadership, of his ability to show compassion for his fellow man.
Chuck Ealey always showed respect. Showed respect for the game, respect for his teammates, respect for his family. He also showed respect to the opponents.
That's all you want. Bring on the best. You know, and I think Chuck and the Toledo Rockets helped make me a better player.
And he went on, and all he did was he kept winning, which is all that Chuck Ealey ever has done. He just kept winning.
Major funding for Undefeated, the Chuck Ealey story, is provided by Investors Group. For more than 80 years, Investors Group has helped Canadians build long-term financial security through relationships between client and consultant. Investors Group, a culture of caring for our communities. And by Buckeye Cable System. Donna D. Smith. With additional support from the following. And by the generous financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.